For the direct instruction stations for Friday, March 15th through Tuesday, March 19th, I will be instructing students who are absent to come watch this video and another one that goes over the two parts of what we learned about. We are starting a new unit of grammar on pronouns. We just finished up a unit on nouns, and what we're going to find is that they're pretty similar in some respects in that they do a lot of the same jobs. A noun, we had a mnemonic that helped us remember that they do the jobs of indirect object, predicate noun, direct object, subject, and object of a preposition. And we're going to find that pronouns do those same jobs. The only job that a pronoun is not going to do is the appositive, and that is because appositives are supposed to give more specific information, and a pronoun really gives more general information. So students have a closed notes sheet that needs to be printed off from this. It should be right next to where this screencast is located, but it's Grammar Bits number 13 about pronouns. And so you need to fill in the missing words. I have the notes on here. The first question it asks you is, what is a pronoun? And a pronoun is a word that takes the place of a noun. And my example to you was, if I was writing something about what happened last night with my children, and I said, Mrs. Culleton bought Mrs. Culleton's children their favorite video game. Mrs. Culleton's children were so excited that Mrs. Culleton's children took out all of the trash without being asked and emptied the dishwasher, and made Mrs. Culleton so happy that Mrs. Culleton's children were so responsible. Now the problem in saying that over and over is we keep hearing Mrs. Culleton and Mrs. Culleton repeated again and again. So we have words like pronouns to take the place of them, she or her. And so if we looked in this sentence here, Mary bought a shirt for her sister. Her is the pronoun, and it takes the place of the word Mary, instead of saying Mary bought a shirt for Mary's sister. The next thing we need to know about pronouns then is, what is an antecedent? And an antecedent is the noun that the pronoun refers to. So Mary bought a shirt for her sister, we said, was the pronoun. Then the antecedent is Mary. It's what the pronoun referred to. And students in class were taking notes like this, so you on your paper should be copying all of this down on your paper as well. Bob gave himself a high five after the test. What's the pronoun? Well, it's himself. Who is himself? What's the noun that himself took the place of? It's Bob. So Bob is the antecedent. And so when you're writing, for example, your journals or your blogs, you can never use a pronoun first. You can't say, he ran away from home, until you have established who he is. And so you always need to make sure that you have that noun labeled first somewhere. The antecedent has to be mentioned before you're allowed to use a pronoun. And so we won't always be using labeling the pronoun and the antecedent, but we will be talking about it. So I will ask you, what's the antecedent in this sentence, and you've got to be able to explain that to me. The next part of the notes has to do with personal pronouns, and it encompasses the next three types. Subject pronouns, object pronouns, and possessive pronouns are all considered personal pronouns. And I have the word person highlighted here to help you remember or make a connection between the fact that we're talking about a specific person or thing when we talk about these pronouns. And this is where pronouns split from nouns a lot and get a lot more complicated, because we now have a couple of separate groups. We had talked about the fact that nouns can do some different jobs. Well, pronouns do the same job, but in a different way. So we have subject pronouns first, and these are the subject pronouns that you will need to know. I, you, he, she, it, we, you, they. And yes, you is listed on here twice, because you can be referring to a singular you, like do your homework, or a plural you if I was talking to the class and said, everybody turn in your homework. So it's singular and it's plural, but it's fortunately the same word, so it's a little bit less for you to have to memorize. Now this set of pronouns can only be used to take the place of two nouns in different places of a sentence. They can do the job of a subject and the job of a predicate noun, but since they're not nouns anymore, we're going to call them predicate pronouns. So it's a pronoun that takes the place of a noun in the job of a subject or a predicate pronoun. So if we look at this sentence here, I am the teacher. The subject is I, and so I has to be a subject pronoun. Now we know that we would never walk around saying me am the teacher or me is the student. This gets a little bit more complicated a little bit later on when we talk about compounds, when we're talking about two people. Do I say I or me? But for right now, what students and what you need to understand is that I am the subject of the sentence, and so when I replace a subject in a sentence with a pronoun, I have to use the word I. Down here, the sentence, the teacher is he. The subject is teacher. The verb is, and we know it's a linking verb. And we also know that the only two things that can come after a linking verb are a predicate noun or a predicate pronoun. So if we are substituting a pronoun in a place where that predicate noun was, we have to use one of these sentences. The teacher is he. And we could label it predicate noun or it's a predicate pronoun. Another example, the students is the subject. Are is a linking verb. Since it's a linking verb, I have to use one of these pronouns to follow it. I can't say the students are them. I have to use the pronoun they. And if my subject is plural, then the pronoun that I refer to it with has to be plural. Teacher was singular, so I used a singular pronoun to refer to it. So subject pronouns, you're going to need to memorize this list, I, you, he, she, it, we, you, they, and know that these are the two jobs that these pronouns are allowed to do. Now we get into object pronouns. Object pronouns can do three other jobs, and it should be a little bit easier to remember them because those jobs all have object in them. We have direct object, indirect object, and object of a preposition. So it should be easy to connect these with object pronouns because they all kind of have the same name with them. And so on your paper you need to copy these pronouns down. Me, you, him, her, it, us, you, them. And you're going to need to memorize these. The nice thing again is that you is the same. It's the only pronoun that's the same from subject to object and singular to plural. So once you memorize the for subject pronouns, you already have two memorized for your object pronouns as well. So now we got to look at the job it's doing in the sentence, and I can see that them is used 3 different times, and we're going to look at why it's 3 different jobs. And we go back to the same way that we've been diagramming sentences. We look first to get rid of our prepositional phrase, in the van. We find our subject, mom. We ask ourselves, what did mom do? Mom brought. If brought is an action verb, we ask ourselves the question, whom or what? Mom brought whom or what? If we can answer that question, then whatever word we answer the question with is a direct object. Mom brought whom? Mom brought them. So that's a direct object. It has to be an object pronoun because it's doing the job of a direct object. The next sentence doesn't have a prepositional phrase. So the subject is mom. Mom brought. We would ask ourselves first to find our direct object, what did mom bring? Mom brought candy. If there's a direct object and there's still another word after the action verb, we ask ourselves, mom brought candy to whom or for whom? And if we can answer that, then we have an indirect object. So we have the same pronoun here being used as a direct object, as an indirect object, and then down here it's in a prepositional phrase, so it's the object of a preposition. we cannot use a subject pronoun, I or you or he, she, it, we, you, they, in place of any pronoun that's doing one of these three jobs. And so this is where pronouns will get a little bit more confusing because we have two sets to memorize to split up between those 5 jobs. The last pronoun that we talk about is possessive pronouns, and we're not going to spend too much time on these other than knowing that when words are used as possessives, they are becoming adjectives. They're not really nouns or pronoun. It's a possessive pronoun, but it's doing a job of an adjective because it's describing my house, your book, its toy. The thing that I wanted students to really get out of this is that we do not use an apostrophe whenever we're using possessive pronouns. Because if we put an apostrophe, let's say in the word its, it becomes a contraction for it is, and it's not a possessive anymore. And so it's kind of the opposite. With possessive nouns, you use an apostrophe. With possessive pronouns, you do not, because it will change it to a contraction. So this all comes into play when we look at our jobs and the problems that we see with them. And so one of my hints here is to drop the noun from the sentence if you're looking at a compound and read it with just the pronoun. So if you're not sure whether to say you and I or you and me, if you cross this out, you know that you would never say me will go to a movie this weekend, that you would say I will go to the movie this weekend. So if you get rid of that first person, it starts to make a little bit more sense. And so I can tell that I am the subject, will go is my action verb. And I should have crossed this out before. Okay, will go whom or what? I can't answer that. This weekend answers the question when, so it's actually doing the job of an adverb. Between you and I or between you and me, how does the movie end? Well, here, getting rid of you doesn't help too much because if we're using between, we're always talking about more than one thing. So now I need to go to my jobs. So the first thing we talk about is getting rid of prepositional phrases. And between is a preposition. And so now I need to think back to my notes. Which pronoun's allowed to do the object of a preposition? Well, it's not a subject pronoun. It's got to be an object pronoun. So my answer has to have one of these pronouns in it. And so me is an object pronoun, and it's doing the job of object of a preposition. As the crowd had anticipated, Jamie and she or her earned the award. Back to our hint, we're going to get rid of Jamie and try reading the sentence by itself. She earned the award or her earned the award. And we can tell very clearly it's she. Now just because it sounds right will never be the correct answer in my class. We also need to know what's the job that she is doing. She is the subject. She earned is your action verb. She earned what? She earned the award. So there's your DO. The candidates with the most votes are them or they. Now here we don't have a compound, so we're just going to have to go through and diagram it. We're going to get rid of our prepositional phrase with the most votes. Candidates is the subject. Are is a linking verb. Now I need to go back and think what follows a linking verb, a predicate noun or a predicate adjective. And so we don't have a predicate noun, but we have a predicate pronoun. So the word that I substitute in there has to be on this list, and that word is they. And it's doing the job of predicate pronoun. Now another hint with this, if you're looking with a linking verb, is try switching the sentence around. Instead of saying the candidates are they, say they are the candidates. Okay, and then down to the last one. Excitedly, the award was given to my brother and he or him. Get rid of my brother. We jokingly said that sometimes we might like to do that. Well, here's your only chance that you can. To my brother, get rid of it, and say the award was given to he or the award was given to him. And it has to be him, and it's doing the object of a preposition. So this is the grammar lesson that we did in class. You need to review this and finish taking the notes so that you're caught up and ready to go for our next session.